Hi, my name is Irina Stinger, and I've been working with Stassi today as her speech-language pathologist. Thank you so much for bringing her in for assessment. She's been great to work with. So today we went through 2 assessments to look at her vocabulary. So the first assessment that we went through was called the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test version 4, or PPVT. So this looks at what's called her receptive vocabulary, which is words that she understands. So the PPVT4 gives us information about her vocabulary, ability to follow instructions, and it also looks at how she does with different parts of speech. Her score on the PPVT for receptive language was in the average range. So she's in the 23rd percentile, which is in the low end of what we would expect for someone typically in her age group. Her strengths were nouns and verbs, and she had a slight weakness for attributes. So the second test that we went through today is called the Expressive Vocabulary Test, version 2, or EVT. So the EVT looks at her expressive vocabulary, which is her spoken vocabulary in this case. So it looks at the vocabulary, her ability to label, also ability to provide synonyms, and it also looks at word retrieval, which is not just the ability to use a word expressively, but to be able to call it up in the moment that she needs it and access that information. So on the EVT, her expressive vocabulary was lower than we would expect for typical of her age. It was in the 6th percentile. So she is in the range where she would be eligible for services to work on her expressive vocabulary. So Stassi's strengths for expressive vocabulary is nouns, and she shows a weakness for verbs and attributes. So that's what we'll be wanting to work on. Now, there is a significant difference between her receptive and expressive vocabulary. Now, it is common for there to be a difference because usually we can understand more words than we can say, because it's just easier to understand something than to produce the word for it. But her difference was a greater difference than would be typically expected. So there are other factors that can influence that too. One can be just, talking to someone you don't know in a different environment. Also, for her understanding of vocabulary, she may have had partial understandings of some words and been able to use process of information. It may also show that she has difficulties with that word retrieval, calling up the word when she's trying to say it, even if she knows how to say it at times. So it's great that we'll be able to start services working with her on her expressive vocabulary, because that's definitely influential to growing literacy and grammar when she's learning more complex sentences, and we want to help her towards having more efficient and effective communication at home, in her academic life, and socially, because her expressive language has a great impact on all of those factors. So she's eligible for services, and we can start therapy for her based on what we've learned from these assessments. So let me talk to you about a few goals that we'll be starting with, and also how you can help with that at home as well. So first, we want to start working on her verbs. Those are very important to developing those more complex sentences, and of course to describing anything that you're doing. So we want to work with her on that as one of our first goals. And we usually play some type of game with the kids where we're showing them a picture of a cartoon character or a movie character and talking about what they're doing. We might go back and forth and see who gets points for naming the most things. So this is the kind of thing that you can do at home very easily. One of the best things you can do is just expose her to different verbs by talking about what you're doing, because she'll have the context of seeing what you're doing. And you can just say something like, I'm opening the mail, I'm answering the phone, and just help her get more exposure to that, and that'll help that grow. Even if she's not saying it, if she's just hearing it, that's still definitely helpful. So the second goal that we're working on is those attributes. So features that you use to describe something. It's often adjectives. So the easiest and a fun thing to do with kids who are working on this is to play a game of I Spy. So we have some different things that we do in the office. Sometimes you can even use, like, if you have a Where's Waldo or a Guess Who at home. Those can be fun to work on this with. And so you can go back and forth describing things. It might be easier to start with you describing things and her guessing them, and then work towards her being able to describe the important features. So by working on this, it's going to help her be able to express her wants and needs, which of course is very important. And that way, if she needs a certain book or if she needs to go to a certain place, she'll build up the vocabulary that she needs for that. So I think these are two great places to start that can have a really positive impact on her language at home, at school, and overall. So I'm really glad that you brought her in for assessment today. And I'm glad that we can get started on building up her language. And I think that over time, we're going to see some great things. So let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for your time.